So our next presenters are the Hampshire County Food Policy Council. Presenting today, we have Kia Aoki, Jeffrey Harness, Pat Keith, Roslyn Melkin, and Caitlin Marquise. So I will turn it over to them.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Siobhan, so much. So I'm Caitlin Marquis, and I will be taking you through our presentation today. And like Siobhan mentioned, there will be a number of other presenters who I'm excited for you to hear from. I do want to just make a note. So we actually recycled a presentation from an information session we had maybe 2 weeks ago now. We did keep the presentation bilingual, whether it's needed or not. We just sort of feel like that's an important part of our initiative, and so wanted to keep it in there. And I'll also note for Spanish speakers in the room, there are some slides on this presentation that have been checked with a native speaker and some that were added afterwards that were not. And so I wanted to keep it bilingual in the spirit of things, but I'm not going to promise that each bilingual slide is perfectly translated. So you can go ahead, Siobhan, to the next slide. And I'm actually going to kick it over to Jeff to talk about our partnership. Jeff Harness from Cooley Dickinson Hospital, who's the lead applicant and fiscal agent.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Nice to see everybody. So as Caitlin mentioned, we are the lead applicant at Cooley Dickinson Healthcare, where I am the interim chief community relations officer and also the director of community health and government relations. And our lead community partner is the Collaborative for Educational Services. And you've heard from Caitlin and you'll hear from her more. Sarah Bankert is also on this meeting. The Hampshire County Food Policy Council Governance Circle, you'll be hearing from them a little later. I believe Kia Aoki will be taking the lead on that, but also Pat Keith and Roslyn Malkin. Hilltown Community Health Center is another partner, and the Hilltown Community Development Corporation is another one. They're not on the call today, but they're important members of our Food Policy Council planning group representing the Hilltown areas, which is a collection of small communities in the rural western portion of Hampshire County. And then lastly, the Mass Health Policy Commission, we consider you to be an important partner as well.
Thanks, Jeff. You can go ahead to the next slide, Siobhan. So, oh gosh, it's tiny. Sorry about that. That's one of the byproducts of making bilingual slides is sometimes the text ends up super tiny. This is just a brief history of how we got to this point. So in 2017, we brought together, we conducted a Hampshire County Food Access Assessment. As part of that, we brought together a Food Access Advisory Committee, which was made up of professional folks working on food insecurity, but also people who were experiencing food insecurity, sort of as equal partners to develop a plan. And the top priority actually coming out of that plan was to establish a countywide food policy council. So that was 3 years ago now. And at the time, we didn't necessarily feel like we had all the resources or, quite the partnerships to go about it. And so we sort of set to work building those partnerships around other priorities that came out of that work. So mobile markets, mobile farmers markets were a huge priority coming out of that assessment. So we so far have established or helped to establish, Healthy Hampshire has helped to establish mobile markets in Northampton, the Hilltowns, and Amherst. And we've also established governing structures or governance structures that sort of are the steering committee for those projects. We have also partnered with some housing managers, the Housing Authority, and a private housing, affordable housing developer, Wayfinders, on establishing community gardens at or near affordable housing complexes. That work continues. But we've also been building some community, the goal with that work is really to just build the gardens and then build the capacity of the community where the garden is to kind of manage that garden and govern it themselves. We went through an Amherst food justice planning process in 2019 before we established the mobile market there, which we had our first season that just ended. And that brings us to 2020. So that's a really blowing through the timeline. But that's, we're so grateful to have received this MassUP grant that allows us to finally realize this goal of establishing a countywide food policy council. And one thing I just wanted to sort of note about, how this work has unfolded is our goal has always been to build engagement and participation and network size and strength over time. And so everything we've done, we've tried to build on the work that's come before it. And we really see all of this work as sort of part of the same network. And the Food Policy Council provides a way to codify that. Next slide, please, Siobhan. So just to go over the goals of the MassUP grant, so might be obvious by now, goal number 1 is to develop a food policy council. We're hoping that that will provide alignment and strategic direction among Hampshire County food system stakeholders. And another really important goal that's part of this grant, and that we were so grateful and thrilled to see MassUP really encouraging, is governance by and for people most impacted by food insecurity in Hampshire County. You'll hear a little bit more about that in a bit. And our goal also is to increase, the decision-making power, roles in decision-making for those folks over time. We're hoping that this sort of high-level collaboration will lead to midstream level changes in the built environment. So things like the projects we've been working on, community gardens at affordable housing complexes, mobile farmers markets. We'll see when the Food Policy Council kind of officially launches, what the priorities are that people bring to the table and what those midstream level changes are that people want to focus on. We're also really thrilled with this grant to be able to provide a discretionary budget that the Food Policy Council will manage. So the Food Policy Council will get to decide with those funds what changes do they want to focus on, or what organizations or entities should receive that funding. Also looking at streamlining food security goals. So I have been doing a little bit of meta-analysis, and I've counted 9 plans that have priorities around the food system in all or part of Hampshire counties that sort of touch Hampshire County. So, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. The work has already been done to establish those priorities. So this is really an opportunity to get many different stakeholders together and look at, okay, which of these do we really want to focus on countywide? And then finally, strengthening collaboration between healthcare and community level interventions. We're really grateful and fortunate to have Cooley Dickinson Healthcare and the Hilltown Community Health Center at the table. Healthy Hampshire has worked with both a lot, and we've found a lot of great ways to collaborate. Things like referrals we've done. We have also, Cooley Dickinson has been a great funder of our work. We've collaborated on assessments. So we think that there's a lot more of that could be done, and we look forward to doing more of that over time. Next slide, please, Siobhan. So just in case folks here don't know what a Food Policy Council is, I just wanted to briefly cover that. So what I think of a Food Policy Council as is really like a department of food, since that doesn't exist. So what a Food Policy Council does is bring together stakeholders that are working in various aspects of the food system. This diagram I brought together from just the stakeholders that we invited to our information session and how we categorize those. But I'm sure looking at this, you can probably imagine many different types of stakeholders or folks who are engaged in the food system in some way. And of course, everybody eats, so we'll be working with the Food Policy Council governance structure to figure out, governance circle to figure out, what are the boundaries of this Food Policy Council? How open or closed are they? What does membership look like? But the goal of bringing all these stakeholders together really is sort of going back to those larger MassUP goals, and it's really democratizing our food system and making sure that the people who have the greatest stake have, a lot of particularly in this case, we want to see people who are most oppressed by the way the food system is currently structured really coming together to make decisions about how to change that. Next slide, please. So, and just to go into a little bit more about how this project moves us upstream. So we're really thinking of the Food Policy Council itself as the thing that sort of addresses that level of institutional inequities, really bringing these organizations and entities together and creating a democratic structure to work together at advancing shared goals. The Food Policy Council Governance Circle, which again, you'll hear more about in a minute, is really looking to transition the way that we think about and that group, the Food Policy Council, thinks about these larger issues like class and race and ethnicity, and really shifting, how we're approaching those issues. And then, like I said, the Food Policy Council will have a budget to address some of those midstream living condition, built environment types of issues in the food system. I think the next slide is where I'm going to pass it over to Pat Keith. Pat, are you here? Let's see.
Okay.
Oh, there you are. We found you.
There I am. So I'm Pat Keith. I'm from Cummington, and I just want to thank all of you for the work that you're doing and let you know how excited those of us on the Governance Council are to be working on the efforts for food security out here in Hampshire County. So as I said, I'm Pat Keith. I'm from Cummington, long-term resident there, and working with Roz Malkin, also from the Hilltowns, living in Chesterfield. We became involved through the Hilltown Mobile Market. So we're both really excited to become part of this. And the other members of the committee are Kia Aoki, excuse me, who will speak next, and Lourdes Santiago. And they both joined by way of their involvement in the community garden at Hampshire Heights in Northampton. The other two members are Johanny Valerio and Lauren Mills, who both live in Amherst, and they became involved in the group through the Amherst Mobile Market. Collectively, we strive to represent the people of Hampshire County in our decision-making. And as you can see, we're representative of Hampshire County from Hilltowns, Amherst, and Northampton. The Governance Circle has been meeting since the end of July to complete our task of recommending a government structure for the Food Policy Council. And Kia is going to let you know about that now.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kia Aoki. I'm very excited to be here, and I'm really excited about this work. I'm a resident of Hampshire Heights in Northampton, and this is something this kind of work is really meaningful to me because I've been impacted by all the things that everybody is working on. So this is just really cool. So the thing about the Governance Circle that's happening is what we're trying to do is create and propose structure and guidelines to assist the Food Policy Council in their decision-making process to expedite their goals efficiently and fairly. Currently, we are considering a system that requires a consensus rather than a vote to ensure that all members are heard from equally, and also to encourage more deep listening when we make those kinds of decisions. The system may be based on a sociocratic model, which we are currently testing in the Governance Circle meetings. And once we have figured out what is effective, what works best, what doesn't, we're going to, I think we're thinking of making some sort of a presentation to the Food Policy Council so they can consider if they want to govern themselves in this way. So I think that what we're not doing is we're not setting the agenda, and I mean in the Governance Circle itself, we're not setting the agenda for the Food Policy Council, but we're giving the Food Policy Council a way to decide that agenda in a very fair and equitable way, which is the whole idea behind how you govern yourself. So I'm gonna pass it to Roz right now, and thank you for listening.
Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me? Good. My name is Roz Malkin from beautiful Chesterfield and sweet little.
Roz, you ended up on mute somehow. There you go.
Did you hear anything I said?
We heard your Roz Malkin from beautiful Chesterfield.
Okay, good enough. The photograph on the left that you see, I found on the internet when I was trying to come up with an image that represents the work that the Food Policy Council hopefully will be doing. And it's a photograph by Sato Jones, who is a wonderful artist and community organizer in Minnesota. And it's called the community meal, and also referred to as a seat at the table. And the table represents gathering and community, and obviously food is so vitally important to life in every form. Is the text there?
Yes, it's there.
Okay, so food just is part of our lives in the most basic of ways. And the Food Policy Council wants to enlarge this table as much as possible, to bring as many people as we can to the table. But it's also incredibly important to us that it's not just about the food you take into your body, it's also about having a voice about how and where you access your food. And food is just, I'm going to go back to the photograph for a moment. I was thinking this morning, as I was looking at this photograph again, how much I love circles. And the image that I have now that I'm using in my mind when I think of the Food Policy Council is actually a circle that goes around the earth. And it's a seat at the table. And they're just millions and millions and millions and billions of people sitting at the table, sharing food, sharing community, acknowledging one another. And it is a global thing. And that's part of, at least in my mind, that we're hoping to start here in Hampshire County. And food, as everybody knows, is important in so many ways and represents so much than just something we put in our bodies. As you can see, it's about nurturance, it's about building relationships, it's about connecting with one another and working together towards common goals, making sure that everybody has readily access to food and healthy food. And it's vital. And we hope to be able to, lost my thought. So part of what happened to me this morning is I decided I wanted to do something a little bit fun with my presentation, add a little different piece. So I was trying to think of food idioms, which also shows how much food has become a part of our language and our culture. And I've got a couple examples out there very quickly, and I'm sure all of you can think of other examples. And this just, again, represents food on so many different levels. There are idioms such as like taking candy from a baby, idioms like apple of his eye, food for thought, have one's cake and eat it too, as nutty as a fruitcake, egg on your face, or walking on eggshells, your goose is cooked. And then there's many, many more. And the last one is that we have bigger fish to fry. So that's ways in which food has also come into our lives that we use day in and day out. And just to wind up my piece, I would say that hopefully as more of you become members of the Food Policy Council, what you will be doing is making room for more people to have a seat at the table and to enjoy the many benefits of healthy food, abundant food, and accessible food. And I'm going to pass it back to Pat.
Hi again. Thank you, Roz. That was just beautiful way to put our work into words and allow us to envision what we see as our work ahead. The culmination, I should say, about the work that we have ahead. So as you can see, our objective is to study we're the preliminary group to study the different governmental structures or meeting processes, and then see what works best for us, and to take that decision or recommendation to the full Food Policy Council to see if they want to use it. And we're using sociocracy in our group, and it has been a wonderful, wonderful learning curve for most of us, and enriching our lives, as well as learning about a structure that's really equitable. So we're right now collaborating, and we're researching ways to do that, so that the food justice and safety hopefully will come about by the work of the food policy and representing the needs of all the people in Hampshire County. So doing so, we hope the Food Policy Council will do so with respect and encouraging individual empowerment from all areas of Hampshire County. Equity and firmness grounded in a plan that provides the welcoming seat at the table for everyone that is in that picture that Roz brought to us. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Pat, Roz, Kia. You all did a beautiful job with that. And I think we just have one or two more slides to share. So this is just our project plan. And like I said, we did have an information session a couple of weeks, I think it was 2 weeks ago now. And so that's part of where we are in the plan at the moment. So as you've heard, the Food Policy Council Governance Circle is meeting and doing its work of deciding on the governance structure. We're starting to bring more stakeholders into the conversation. We are also planning a couple of what we're calling learning circles in November and December. And those will be opportunities for folks to kind of stay engaged with the work, hear what the governance circle is doing, what kind of progress they've made, and then also, sort of frame out how we want to start thinking about food security in Hampshire County through the topics we choose for those learning circles. And then we're hoping the Food Policy Council will start meeting in earnest in early 2021. Of course, we have to develop an implementation plan, so it'd be a good time to establish what some of those goals are. And sort of through the end of next calendar year, really working with whatever body gets established, however it looks, to figure out who the roles are, who the leaders are, what the various groups and circles are. And then we'll just keep meeting and until the grant is over, and hopefully by that time we will have figured out some additional funding to keep going forward. So I'm really looking forward to digging deeper into this work. And I think there's just one more slide, if I'm correct. Siobhan. So I'll just leave it on this slide. I don't need to say a lot about it, but I just want to share these word clouds. During our information session, we asked these questions. On the left, in 1 or 2 words, what do you see as the value of having a Hampshire County Food Policy Council? And on the right, after hearing about how we're approaching this work, what is one personal value that motivates you to get involved? And I was just really inspired by these answers. On the left, particularly collaboration, empowerment, community, and on the right, social justice, equity, access. And so it's just really encouraging to me to see these issues that people want to come together around. And I will end it there. And I think any of us are happy to take questions.
Thank you so much, Pat, Roz, Kia, Caitlin, and Jeff. We probably have time for maybe like 1 or 2 questions. So I'm just going to open it up to see if if anyone does have questions, and we can always continue some of these conversations as well during our small group breakout session. So there'll be opportunity there as well. But does anyone have any questions that they'd like to ask? Feel free to unmute yourself. Okay. Doesn't look like we have any questions. Okay, there's one question that came in from Mary to everyone. Would love to hear how groups are connecting with community engagement during COVID. Is that something Caitlin, Jeff, Kia, Pat, Ross, that you can respond to?
Zoom.
Yeah. Right. Go ahead, Kia. Yeah.
Yeah, it's mostly it's Zoom. You know, we have our regular meetings via Zoom, and for any communications that needs to happen in between that, it's mostly email, which is a little bit sad right now. I'm really looking forward to the day when we can all get together in person and have conversations about these things. But right now we're being COVID safe.
Yeah, any ideas for fun activities would love to hear as groups, start to meet and engage with communities via Zoom. They can be so stale and boring. It's kind of hard to celebrate and really get to know one another. So just looking for ideas.
Yeah, it's a great question. We'll probably be asking that too. Pat, it looked like you had an answer.
Pat, you're on mute.
I'm sorry, I'm never going to get used to remembering that. I just wanted to let folks know that we had our mobile markets throughout the summer in Cummington that were very, very successful in person, but we used really strict guidelines, social distancing and masks, and made everyone feel very, very comfortable. So I think that's a good example of how the collaboration with our people, our customers, if you will, provided a way to do it safely. And it was wonderful.